Moving on to the stomach. The stomach is basically for food storage, and it performs some of the preliminary digestion. It's located in the upper abdominal cavity, just below the diaphragm, and it's to the left of your body. The stomach has accordion folds, which are very elastic, called rugae. It can stretch to hold about a half a gallon of fluid and food. That's 2 liters, so we don't have to eat constantly. The stomach secretes digestive juices or gastric juices that contain hydrochloric acid, which has a pH of 2. A pH of 2 is acidic enough to dissolve iron nails, so it's pretty amazing that we have an acid with such a low pH in our bodies. If you put HCl on your skin, it would burn you. The gastric juices are secreted by the epithelial lining of the stomach, and one of the things that they contain is pepsinogen. One of the things that they contain is pepsin. Pepsin is the enzyme that hydrolyzes proteins, but it is secreted in an inactive form called pepsinogen, so it doesn't destroy the cells of the stomach. The parietal cells in the lining of the stomach secrete the hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid converts the pepsinogen into pepsin. So hydrochloric acid is only going to be released when there's food present. Therefore, the pepsinogen is only going to be converted to pepsin when food is present. The stomach is also coated with a mucus to prevent self-digestion. About every 20 seconds, the stomach churns to mix the contents. If it's empty, that churning actually makes you feel hunger pangs. The food eventually turns into an acid chyme, which is like a nutrient-rich broth. And it passes through the pyloric sphincter. The pyloric sphincter is in between the stomach and the small intestine. And that sphincter opens and closes to release that acid chyme into the small intestine, basically 1 squirt at a time. It takes between 2 to 6 hours after you've eaten a meal for it all to leave the stomach. And of course, that depends on what kind of food it is. Protein takes longer to digest, carbohydrates digest quicker. At the top of the stomach, the esophageal or cardiac sphincter is located between the esophagus and the stomach. This closes when there's no bolus or food present in the esophagus to prevent stomach acid from backing up. Sometimes when you lay down, the stomach acid can back up into the esophagus, causing heartburn. Because that esophageal sphincter is basically in the center of your chest, it can feel like that discomfort is occurring in the location of your heart. I want to talk a little bit about ulcers. There's a really interesting story about ulcers, and they used to be treated with acid-reducing medication. People were told to avoid stress, drinking, smoking, acidic or spicy foods, but no one realized mainly caused by bacteria in your stomach. I'm going to show you a video that talks about ulcers.
Food enters the body through the mouth, then travels down the esophagus and into the stomach. The stomach produces acid and an enzyme called pepsin, which aids in digestion. The stomach lining is protected from digestive acids by a thin layer of mucus. Sometimes an imbalance between the pepsin and stomach acids can develop. When this happens, an ulcer can form. An ulcer is a sore that develops on the lining of the stomach. Symptoms of gastric ulcer can include abdominal pain that occurs after a meal, nausea, vomiting, weight loss, and fatigue. Some gastric ulcers can be caused by infection with a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori. This bacteria exists in the stomach and can change the mucus layer that protects the lining from digestive acids. Cigarette smoking, foods, and beverages containing caffeine, alcohol use, and certain medications may contribute to the development of gastric ulcers.
This is an article about the doctor who discovered the link between Helicobacter pylori and ulcers. Robert Warren and Barry Marshall were the doctors who made the link between Helicobacter pylori and ulcers. They actually won the Nobel Prize for it after their important discovery. What happened was Dr. Warren was a pathologist, and he discovered that these little curved bacteria were abundant in the stomach of people that had ulcers. When he looked at about 100 different patients and came up with the theory that these bacteria are damaging the lining of the stomach, making it susceptible to ulcers, he presented his work to colleagues who really laughed at him. So in order to prove that he was right, he drank a cocktail of these bacteria and infected himself with ulcers. Moving on to the small intestine. The small intestine is the longest section of the digestive tract or alimentary of its diameter, not its 6 meters long, which is close to 20 feet. This is where most of the hydrolysis of food and the absorption of nutrients occurs. The duodenum is the first 25 centimeters, which is a little bit less than a foot. When the acid chyme enters the duodenum, it's mixed with digestive juices from various places. The pancreas produces enzymes and alkaline solutions that buffer the stomach acid. Because the small intestine is not protected from the stomach acid, when the acid chyme enters the small intestine, it's immediately neutralized with these buffers from the pancreas. The liver, the gallbladder, and there's actual cells in the wall of the small intestine all add different types of chemicals, enzymes, and buffers to the acid chyme. Bile is produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder. Bile is not an enzyme, it's actually considered a salt. It works as a detergent to break things down, especially fat, from the breakdown of red blood cells. And that red, as it's added to your undigested food, is eliminated in the feces, and it's partially responsible for the color. Most of the absorption of nutrients occurs in the small intestine. The small intestine has a surface area of about 300 square meters. That's the size of a tennis court. The reason that it has such a large surface area is because, first of all, it has villi in the lining. These are finger-like projections. Within those villi are microvilli, which are microscopic appendages on each of the epithelial cells of the villi. The combination of the villi and the microvilli greatly increase the rate of nutrient absorption. Each villus has a network of capillaries and a lacteal. Lacteal is actually a small vessel of the lymphatic system that basically contains interstitial fluids where the capillaries contain blood. Nutrients are absorbed through 2 layers of epithelial cells into the blood and the lymphatic system to be distributed throughout. The digestive and absorptive processes are very efficient. We absorb 80 to 90% of the organic matter in our food. The remaining 10 to 20% is cellulose, which we do not digest and becomes part of the feces. We use 3 to 30% of the chemical energy in our food to digest and absorb the food that we're actually eating. Moving on to the large intestine. The large intestine is also called the colon. The large intestine is connected to the small intestine at a T-shaped junction. A sphincter controls the movement of materials. The cecum is one arm of the T where it's connected to the small intestine. The cecum is a pouch. In some animals, it's enlarged because it contains microorganisms that help to break down cellulose. In humans, the cecum is small. Attached to the cecum is the appendix. It's a little finger-like extension. The appendix is a vestigial structure that is thought to have played a larger role in diets of our ancestors. The main branch of the large intestine, or the colon, is an upside-down U shape. It's about 1.5 meters long, so it's considerably shorter than the small intestine, but it has a larger diameter, which is why it's called the large intestine. The main function of the large intestine, or the colon, is to recover water that has acted as a solvent in digestion and absorption. About 7 liters, 1 3/4 gallon, are secreted in the digestive tract each day. This is more than you drink. A lot of this water, this liquid, comes from your body. Most of it is reabsorbed in the large intestine. The feces is the waste of the digestive tract. It becomes more solid as it moves along. Within about 12 to 24 hours, food moves through the large intestine. The large intestine contains E. coli, which is the most common bacteria in the large intestine. E. coli is important for producing gas. It produces methane and hydrogen sulfide. Some of its other functions is the production of vitamin K, biotin, folic acid, and other B vitamins. The terminal portion of the colon is the rectum. This is where feces is stored until it's eliminated. And then the anus is the external opening. There's 2 sphincters between the rectum and the anus. One is voluntary and one is involuntary.